Hey everybody, this is ManTalk here, and I'm Todd Hagen and William MP, and we're going to talk about a little clip we got here that addresses a couple of things, and we'll see how it goes. So I will play the clip now, and we'll get back as soon as it's over and start talking. Here it goes.
A woman who embodies her feminine energy supports her hardworking masculine energy partner simply by being feminine. While you may be a smart woman and perhaps even smarter than your partner, it doesn't automatically entitle you to take on the role of solving problems that require masculine energy. If you've chosen to be the feminine energy partner, you consciously decide to defer to his leadership because you believe he's worth it, 51% of the time at least. Respecting your masculine energy man means following his lead, even when he may seem inefficient, ineffective, or uneconomical through your more practical masculine perspective, provided he remains moral and ethical.
I wish I wrote all this down so I could have it in front of me. I love the last part. As long as he stays moral and ethical. Yeah, if he's not, then forget it. It's
interesting. This is like the third time I saw the clip, and this last time I saw the clip, I'm like, and it's so easy to misconstrue what she said as, if you're gonna be in your feminine, don't be smart.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's not.
No, I love that too. You may be smarter than him, but that doesn't mean
be dumb. Yeah. Is that what she's implying? Like, that's not. I don't think what she's implying. But boy,
no, it isn't. It isn't. But I know exactly what you mean. I mean, this is she's really sharp. I really like Danielle. I like what she has to say. But like I was saying to you before we started, she really has to. She's presenting these little soundbite clips that are a minute long. She has to be very, very black and white in order to make her point.
Clarify and kind of give herself outs to not be misconstrued the way that we do in this long form. Well, and you and I were pointing out too the first time that we had a look at this that like, well, isn't this just kind of what happens when you're in a leadership position? If you are a member of a team and someone else is the chosen leader, it behooves you and to be a team player.
Yeah, right.
Follow the lead, be the follower, and you might perceive that what the leader is doing is
exactly
to do things, but what's best for the team is for you to defer to them and fall in line. And when it's your turn to lead, then you can let yourself shine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But again, obviously so. Mm-hmm. The problem is that why is a guy always going to be the leader? And he's not. And I think that's what's important to clarify here too, that she says, if you're in a relationship where you have taken on the feminine role, then okay, but that's not the whole relationship necessarily. I mean, the masculine is expressed by the woman. In this case, we're talking about heterosexual man and woman. The masculine, as she constellates, has a very, very important place, obviously, in a relationship. And it's different. And this is something that I think people have to realize. Her masculine constellation is different than his masculine constellation. And her feminine constellation is different than his feminine constellation. But it gives it a quality then, too, that it actually becomes something that isn't going to be present in his masculine presentation. Yeah. So
it sounds like what she's describing, though, and she doesn't say it explicitly, is that you're talking about a situation in which there is a conscious acceptance of polarities. So, and this is something that's consent, that when it's done ethically is done in consent. I consent to hold the feminine and you consent to hold the masculine. And we're going to do our best to follow to be in those polarities. And we trust that following that, we'll have a better relationship. You can do this from the beginning. You can do this after relationships have fallen off the rails. That's almost always how, I coach people to apply this, is like when things start to go wrong in your relationship, try coming back to polarities and see what comes together for you. Both have to be in consent. The one carrying the feminine has to agree, okay, I'm gonna let you lead. I'm going to
Right.
I'm going to trust you, and I'll do my best, and you do your best, and we'll see if things improve for the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the problems, I know one of the problems, I shouldn't say I think, one of the problems in our current culture is this idea of equality. I think that couples, at least the ones I see, really believe that one or the other of them in any situation should not have say over the other, that it should be equal. I'm not quite sure how you could even accomplish that. Just like you were saying earlier, you could have a group of men or a group of women, but you could have a group of men who are all holding the masculine. One of them is assigned the leader. And all the others, I mean, you look at that in anything, in sports and government and anything. One of them is the leader and the other are the team that follow the leader. And they may have better ideas. They may be smarter. They may be any number of things, but they know that's the way it works. And I think you're going to have the same thing in a team of two people where one of them in certain situations, and maybe the majority of them, I mean, maybe depending on the context, is the leader and is different. They're not equal. They're not the same. It's different than the partner who is the team player. I think the culture and feminism, or whatever you want to call it, that movement has a real hard time with that. And of course, men take it for granted. You know, they're used to what the culture's told them for, you know, the traditional patriarchal, whatever you want to call it, for hundreds of years, says, oh, the man's the one that makes the decisions. He's the boss. He's the one that does this. So they don't have a problem with that idea for the most part. And they do have a problem when that idea is, some of them do, not all men, of course. But you run into this thing then, and I don't think people talk about this or think about it too much, is that it does go against the grain of an archetypal system. And this is what we talk about a lot on this. It's like, it's not just a decision that's made. You can't just decide, no, we're going to do it different. We're going to be equal. You know, both voices have the exact same thing going on, or we're going to do a different kind of family situation. My woman is the one that makes all the decisions. She does everything. And, you know, you could consciously make a decision like that, but you're running against the grain of these archetypal systems that have been in play for hundreds of thousands of years. And you're going to run into issues. It's not impossible, but you have to be conscious of those issues. Does that make sense? I mean,
totally. I mean, like, it's sure that, like, on the one hand too, there's also this sort of democratic fantasy.
Yeah, right.
It'll all be better if we all have a say. Meanwhile, when everyone has a say, no one has a say. Yeah. When everyone's the leader, no one's the leader. But I also can't help just pulling back into a cultural framework and saying, you know, isn't it ironic that the very people who pretend to be the protectors of democracy are all the ones who have absolutely no problem whatsoever with sabotaging the chosen leader? Yeah. It's the most undemocratic thing. Democracy works like this. We're all going to vote, and one person's going to be the leader, and then we're all going to follow, even if we don't like it. And they go, fuck that. I'm not going to follow that guy. Are you kidding? That guy. Misogynist, racist, Nazi, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do it.
Who are you talking about? William, who are you talking about?
I'm sure, but I don't even know that the right's any better. I'm sure that there's plenty of examples on the right of people who, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's another thing at play here, which I'm kind of going to sort of add to that, which is just the rise of infantile, grandiose narcissism. Nobody wants to follow. Everyone wants to be the leader. Everyone. I'm going to be the fucking queen. I'm going to be the king. I'm going to be the president. And so when you find these situations where it's like, no, I'm entitled to have my say. I get to choose too. You don't get to tell me what to do. I get to have a say in the matter. A lot of kids struggle with that one because it's infantile, right? We grew up in an egalitarian democracy. Why don't I get to have a say?
Now, can you go
yourself to be a follower and say, hey, I'm going to defer to you. I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I'm doing that. I'm sacrificing, my narcissistic gratification in being right for the betterment of the group, because I know that that's not going to be helpful if I just criticize the leader and I don't get behind him or her or them and move this thing forward. Sorry,
let's talk for a second. What you said there really, I think, is really important. The difference between having a say and having veto power, having the say. And I run into that a lot with my couples, where it's like I don't even have a voice. And I think that's very true in a lot of couple situations, and I don't think that works. You can have a leader, you can have the one. I always think about Obama for some reason. I think as much as you might have opinions about him, I think of some situation. I can't remember what it was. I read something or saw something where I think he was really good at that. I think where it would be like he had his advisors around him, and he would say, "I want to hear what you think of this. I want you to tell me what you think of this," and he would listen and nod and go, and then he'd make his decision. It wasn't necessarily what his advisors were saying, but he would use that information. And I, with my couples, this is something I see all the time, that it's like, if you have a narcissistic man, woman, and he doesn't let his partner say anything, he doesn't listen to her, that's a problem. But if he does, and then still makes a decision contrary to what she said, she will still, very often will still say, I had no voice. And her interpretation is, if you don't do what my voice said, then I don't have a voice.
Oh, right. No, that's a good one. I mean, how often do you see that in couples fights where it's like, you're not listening? It's like, no, I'm just not agreeing.
Right.
Smarter than you say. I just don't happen to agree with you. It's very different than not listening to you.
Right.
But again, you see embedded in that infantile entitlement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's what is normal and natural about that? I think there was a time, and I'm not saying it's better or that we should go back to that time, but there was a time in a relationship, man and woman, where the woman didn't even bother to have a say. She didn't even have one. She didn't have an opinion. It's not like she was told, I don't care about your opinion. She didn't even have one about certain things. She ran the household, raised the kids. She had an opinion about that, but she didn't have an opinion about the money coming into the house, or whether they were going to move or not, or whatever. And again, I'm not saying it's the way it should have been and it should still be that way. I'm just saying that there was a time where there wasn't a conflict about, why aren't you listening to me? I have a say here. And we went a lot of years like that. And now we're changing those things. I think it's for the better. I personally do. I think everybody in a family, or the parents, or the including the kids don't have a say. Okay. In my opinion, you can listen to them when they reach a certain age, and you can go, yeah, okay, I hear you, but I don't agree with you. But anyhow, the man and the woman, or whatever the orientation is, they should both have a voice. Now, does that mean that one of them should have veto power over the other? In certain situations, like you said earlier, that there's consent, that they both agree. Do you feel, William, that if for a healthy couple, that almost every situation should have a leader and veto power? Not veto power, but power. Like every situation, okay, we talk about money. I am the one that makes the final decision. I am the one that does that. It seems like, and it could be the man, could be the woman. It doesn't really matter, as long as one of them is the leader and one of them is not. And according to Danielle, the leader is constellating masculine archetype. Okay, by being the leader.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll answer. No. Because it's perfectly plausible to have a relationship that's functional, that's not grounded in polarities.
Okay.
A polarity relationship is a very unique thing. A polarity relationship is when me and my partner have decided consciously to kind of fulfill a contract of, I'm going to lead and you're going to follow. I'll hold the masculine, you hold the feminine. It's actually quite radical. Because whereas that was sort of what was happening by default in more traditional patriarchal kind of family constellations, this one is like, no, we're actually choosing to do it. I'm actually choosing to be, if I'm holding the feminine, I'm going to choose to be in the passive pole to your active pole. And so that's a radically different thing. Yeah. So is that necessary? No. But like, as I said before, I mean, the thing that I like about polarity teachings is that when you find that there's a relationship that's gone off the rails and you listen carefully to what's happening and you kind of diagnose that, for example, there is no one taking the lead and that's what's causing the problem, that's when the intervention of try temporarily these polarities on for size and see if they fit. But if you're in a relationship where there isn't someone who leads and someone who follows, that it is democratic or whatever, like that the decisions are kind of both collectively made, that's functional, great. You don't need
well, yeah. But let me refine that a little bit and see if there's more
sure.
argument in it. If you have two people, again, just for simplicity, I'm going to say man and woman, just because it's easier. If you have a man and a woman in a relationship, and the man is let's say they're talking about whether they're going to invest in some stock or something, or a new house or whatever, and the man goes, I'm going to be, in his mind, not necessarily verbally, but I'm going to be the one that wants to be the leader here. And she has her voice and she says, I don't really think that's a good idea. I don't think we should do this. And he's thinking the same thing. Okay, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with your voice. You can have a couple that happens the majority of the time. Okay, it's rare, but you can have it. Then there's no polarity. All right. Okay, am I using that right? Okay, then there's no conflict in polarity. So even though one of them might think they are the final voice in something and the other one not, and the other one is the follower, it's never exercised. Okay, or very, very seldom is it exercised. So you have situations like that that you can say that the polarity never comes into it, but it doesn't come into it just because they happen to agree. Right? I mean, how could you make this is for you. How can you make decisions from a non-polar position if you're in disagreement?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think essentially what will happen is that it all just sort of gets worked out in the wash. In a lot of healthy relationships, there's some moments when one person in the couple is kind of taking the lead in one way and one person's taking the lead in the other. There may be extended periods in which one person is taking the entire lead and the other person is incapable. But in the end, it all kind of works out. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to there's a major decision to be made here, and we're at an impasse, it's difficult. I mean, it's going to get worked out. It's just a matter of like, how do you deal with the fallout? Obviously, there's going to be situations where if there's a big decision and someone says like, "Hey, I just can't go along with the decision that you're making," well, now you've got a huge compatibility problem. And I don't know that's an issue of necessarily of polarities. So polarities would be mostly like, look, if I show up in relationship as the person who's just ahead of things, visionary, looking into the future, paying close attention to what needs to be done, and then therefore making decisions, it's very easy for the other partner to fall in line. For example, when it comes to like money, it's like, well, if I'm the one monitoring the bank accounts, monitoring the investments, the financial news, and we're doing well in our investments, and our retirement savings is doing great, and all of our assets are building up. Great. The one partner says, I'm more than happy that you're doing that because this is something that I'm not particularly good at and you seem to be good at it, and I'm more happy to defer to you. I mean, that's a big thing in my relationship when it comes to like making appointments. I'm more than happy to not have to worry about when we have scheduled things and when things are happening, because when I know that when my partner is able to take that on, it just relieves me of a lot of the kind of the mental work that it would be to do that I just really don't think I'm capable of. Also because it takes a lot of empathy, right? Like, oh, we have to make sure to remember to send a card to that person who, had this and this. And like, I'm not that tuned in to the lives of the people around me because I'm so focused on work, which is essentially carrying.
Well, isn't that the masculine at work there? One of the things Danielle makes certain she points out as she's using terms like masculine and feminine, those energies, those archetypal energies, whatever you want to call them, have a huge influence in how we deal with this stuff. If we're talking about money, which is generally, I don't know, I guess we could argue about this, but is generally considered a masculine, whatever system. Doesn't mean women can't do it. Okay. It just needs that. It just means in this context that women would have to constellate the masculine systems or archetypes in order to do it well. Okay. If we're talking about something like that, then it's going to be more natural from an archetypal perspective for the man in the relationship to be the one that is, say, maybe more informed about it, takes more of an interest in it, is more passionate about it. Again, that's maybe the middle of a bell curve. Okay. There's always outliers. I mean, obviously there's some brilliant women that are financial advisors and do all that. There's no statement on that.
Masculine. That's why
they're
because they're very high in the masculine.
That's right. And that's one of the nice things about looking at things through the archetypal lens is that the archetypes are available to everybody. There isn't a special type of masculine that's available only to men or only to women. There is a difference, I think, just like I said earlier, in the sex of the constellator of the archetype.
Biology, of course, that's the difference, is that we have different biologies.
Yeah, right. It just but that doesn't mean that you can't have a woman that is more masculine in a certain aspect than a man. I mean, it's like, it works that way. But anyway, the point that I was going to is again, I don't think this is so much about the content. It is about something that's lower and deeper than the content. If you have a man and woman, like a couple that's having a big argument about money, and they come in to a session and the woman says, he never listens to anything I say. He just does whatever he wants to do. The issue is listening. The issue is respect and regard for your partner's worldview. And it could be totally uninformed. You could have a woman or a man that doesn't know shit about the argument, okay, knows nothing about finances, nothing at all. And they go, I'm your partner, you should listen to me. And he might say, why should I listen to you? You don't know anything. Okay, you're in trouble if you do that. It's like you have to listen, you have to love and accommodate and know that your partner has respect, maybe not for that issue. You may not respect her for her knowledge of the financial markets, but you respect her. She's your love. She's your partner. She's the mother of your children. If you have kids, there are many, many things you respect her for because you love her. She's your partner. So you have to constellate that when you're having a conversation about money that you think she doesn't know shit about. So it's like, that's what she's complaining about. And in the couples session, the men so often know, well, she doesn't know anything about money, so why should I listen to her? It's like, no, you listen to her and you regard her. You don't just sit there and listen, but you actually go, let me think about that. Or, maybe that's a good idea, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. And that's the core of the blessing of the king in his fullness. And the blessing gives is that you never feel stupid when he listens to you. In fact, every time that you come to him, despite all of his great knowledge and accomplishment, you walk away feeling like, smarter than you actually are.
Yeah, right.
That's the blessing.
Right.
And, in terms of kingship in its wholeness, it's always a prudent idea to take enough time to listen to everybody and consider all sides before making major decisions, because we all have blind spots, and being able to hear pushback from someone who we don't agree with often will reveal our blind spots and help us to make better choices. Right?
I think that is a really important point. And I think in just human communication or just human existence in general, we are, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, anybody that comes into our view, okay, no matter how much you think they don't know anything or you don't like them or whatever, anybody that comes in that is there to teach you something. And, from a metaphysical, spiritual perspective, that knowledge that you get from somebody speaking something, like let's go back to the partner thing. If she knows shit about finances, and she's your partner and you love her and you're listening to her, but listening to her, not just lip service, just having your ears
like looking for your great defense. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But listening, you will find something in what she says that teaches you something and makes you see it from a different perspective and broadens your awareness.
And from the perspective of balance, you'll notice that masculinity in its fullness has a very healthy drop of the feminine receptive listening.
Yeah.
It literally makes the great king in his masculine great is that he has this capacity for the feminine in that moment. That's the yin and the yang, the drop of the white and the black, and vice versa.
Yeah, keeping the sword in the sheath. It's like what is it that keeps a masculine warrior from just chopping everybody's head off? It's the feminine that's integrated within that whole system. That allows for that.
But so she's talking, about, okay, so if you've decided that you're going to agree to polarities within the relationship, she's speaking to these women of you have to get out of the way, and right or wrong, you have to have faith and kind of hold space for those decisions if you want the polarities to work.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we have to, I think, kind of pull out of this a little bit, because what she's not doing, I hope, is trying to tell people that relationships need to be this way, should be this way, are dysfunctional if they're not this way. Because I don't agree with that.
And she does imply that, but you're right. I don't. If we had her in the room here, I don't think she would agree that she's doing that consciously.
She would say that she's speaking in particular to women who have agreed to hold the feminine for his masculine, and things to work in that way. And yes, and in that scenario, it may be hard because everyone knows that when you see things, being done in a way that you wouldn't do, it's very easy for you to want to jump in and correct or suggest. Or I was giving the example of, if my wife is in the midst of, making some huge meal for the family, I come in there and look at what she's cooking and go, oh no, don't do it that way. You should do it this way. This is the wrong. You should use these ingredients. She'll rip my head off, as opposed to I walk in and say, what did you need me to do? Right?
Yeah, right. So
this is me saying you are in the lead here. In this domain, and I'm here in service of you. So is that polarities? I mean, it's certainly not the, it sort of grinds on this idea of, well, in traditional relationships, the man leads and the woman follows. Well, not so in that scenario. And yet that's kind of traditionally, I mean, what scenario would there be where me walking into the kitchen and saying, no, you should change it and do it this way? Do things go better? Right.
Well, none probably, but I think the example you give, which is great, but the example you give is the traditional superiority to the woman cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as opposed to if she were in there installing the dishwasher or something, and you were a contractor, you were a tradesman, and you built dishwashers every day for 8 hours a day, and you saw her in there fucking it up.
Sure.
Do you feel that you could say to her, you're doing that wrong, honey? Let me show you how to do it.
That's a good one. I like that. Well, reverse it. Like, what if I'm the one in there cooking and she?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So, yeah. Probably if I'm in the weeds in the middle of cooking a huge meal, right? What I would rather her do than criticize the way I've done something or try to correct it is to simply ask me what I need. Now, look, in either of those scenarios, is it possible that I have something to learn from her in how I'm preparing the meal? Yeah. And her from me in the scenario that I gave? I mean, sure. But it's like, in that moment when there's that crisis, it's like you just refer back to, I'm going to let you lead and I'll follow. We can later on, when you're not in the weeds in the kitchen, I can say, hey, you know what, next time, maybe it would be better to try it this way. Have you tried it that way? And then I have, the ears to hear it. What's interesting about all of that is how what I was saying before is we revert back to polarities when we go into crisis. This is very different than consciously deciding to stay in those polarities no matter what, whether or not you're in crisis. When the relationship is in crisis, try moving back to those polarities. And
Yeah.
pardon me.
No,
When you're cooking, it's where there's a kind of crisis. Again, it's like you would naturally defer back to, hey, you lead and I follow.
Yeah, and it's too when you get into the details of things, maybe she's a better cook than you are. Okay, whether she's a woman or not, maybe you're a better cook than her, and it's been assigned to you, however it is, that you're the one to prepare the meal. Okay, and you're the better cook. Her traditional role as a woman does not mean she can come in there and say, you're doing all this shitty. It's like, I'm going to tell you how to do it right. It I think it boils down to that when someone is assigned either explicitly or implicitly to a particular task, that unless they're destroying something that later on both people will regret, that task should be their responsibility. They should be the leader in that task. And it should be recognized by both people. Like my task, one of my tasks, I hope it's only one of my tasks, is washing the dishes after dinner. Okay. And I have a very specific way I do it. It may be stupid. It may not be as effective. How I load the dishwasher.
And kind of unique, but yeah, it's your way.
Cindy will come in and start rearranging the dishwasher, the standard thing. And she goes, well, this is better. And I don't care if it's better. It's like, I'm doing it. I don't give a fuck if it's better. And she goes like, well, don't you want to learn something? And it's like, okay, just like you said a minute ago, you can learn later, like if the dishes go through, as long as I don't destroy them. Okay. And they go through my inefficient way. Yeah. And later on that night, and Cindy says nothing. And later on that night, we're sitting down and we're reading or doing something. And she says, can I talk to you about something? Would you be interested in knowing or learning something about my experience? That probably wouldn't be the best way to say it, but let's say she says it in this very neutral way. Yeah. And I go, yeah, sure. And then she explains to me how it's better to put the cups this way, blah, blah, blah. And as long as she's not threatening and not offensive about it, I could sit there and go, oh, okay, thank you. Sure. And the next time I do the dishes, then I'll do it more like she said, but not just because she does it that way, but because it is better. And I learned something from it, but not in the moment of doing it.
No.
Yeah.
Literally the crisis, and then you get asked, like, well, what's the crisis? And the crisis for you, Todd, is that like these fucking dishes need to get in the dishwasher so I can go lay down.
Yeah.
It's 9:00 at night now, and I'm like done.
Right.
And she comes in, she wants to read it. Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Yeah, and there is a that I don't know if I'd call it archetypal, but I think it is. There is something about, this is my job. This is what I do, and I am doing it, and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's inefficient. Maybe later on I could reassess and go, oh, gee, that'd be a better way to do it. But it's like, my partner is not going to come in and tell me how to do my job and criticize. And I'm the same the other way around too. That's not just a man thing. I mean, it's what she's doing as well. Yeah. So it's, I think that's relevant to what Danielle's talking about. It
makes you think about the old line of like, know your place, and how that grinds on us now. And we hear that and we think of repression, but it's kind of like the thing about archetypal understandings of like masculine and feminine, and to a certain extent polarities, and even these like trad wives or traditional things. It's like, look, there are realms in which male-bodied, high and masculine people will excel. It'll be naturally easier for them, given their biology and their conditioning. And there are realms in which, female-bodied, people that are high in the feminine are going to excel in others. The nurturance of children is generally something that comes easy to female-bodied, women-identified, high and feminine women. And, construction is a job that comes naturally or is easier for most people who are male-bodied, and, and it doesn't mean that men cannot nurture children or that women can't build buildings. It simply means that like it's going to be easier for you to do those things. And so if you find yourself, and as a man being asked to nurture, and it's difficult for you, and if a woman finds herself being asked to do something construction wise, it's hard for her to recognize that, of course, it's this contra naturam. You're going against nature here. It doesn't mean you can't do it. By all means, if a woman wants to work in construction, she should be allowed to and encouraged. And I would even say that there should be a special sort of dispensation for women that want to leg up in that field so that they can get more involved, because it's hard to get into that field. I'm all for it. That's fantastic. But don't expect that when you get there that it's going to be as easy for you to do that job as it is for male-bodied people. I mean, sure, biology, will have the final say. Of course, nowadays I realize that for a lot of the cuckoo left, that's not true.
Which isn't true, that it's easy. Oh my God! Yeah,
making these arguments.
Yeah, but you're using an example, at least the construction example, with something that is directly tied in with biology, with strength and stature and all that. But you can use that with any. You don't have to go to the biology part of it with anything. I mean, again, we can go into the archetypal part. Sure. Why is it that a feminine body or a female body is more likely to constellate feminine archetypes? I mean, that's a big question. Don't need to even address that.
Well, because it's tied to biology, right?
Yeah, sure it is. Sure it is.
You can't transcend it, but it's tied to it.
Yeah. See, I like to look at it. It's a little bit different wording, but I like to look at it rather than use the word easier. I would use the word passionate, that a passion for a particular activity is more accessible to, say, a passion for construction is more accessible to the biological male, and a passion for nurturing children is more accessible just because it is, again, middle of bell curves. There's always outliers. But if we're talking about consensual, majorities and whatnot, we could safely say that in certain contexts. Different cultures might be different. I think most of this stuff goes across all cultures that we're talking about. And there's really no point in getting picky with detail because there's always exceptions. There's always outliers. There's always things that you could say, well, what about this? Absolutely. But just, they're broad strokes, but they're not really broad. They're broader than little hairlines, to say something like it's passion for a certain activity that is considered masculine activity is more accessible to a masculine or biologically male person. And it might be easier because of the physiological aspect. It could be easier. And if you're passionate about something, it is easier. I mean, it is easier to engage in a very focused way and in a very diligent way and whatever. So you could use the word easy. I mean, it's not like that different, but
is it? I mean, it's sort of like standard stuff. I mean, anything that's dirty, dangerous, or disgusting tends to go to the male identified, partner.
Yeah, what is it? Puppy tails and snails and.
If the cat brings a half-dead mouse onto the porch, who do you think is going to be the one to?
Or kill the spider on the ceiling in the bedroom. Exactly. Right.
I was thinking that you're talking about not complicating things, but the issue around money, it's a very interesting one in Korea, and I think it's true for a lot of East Asian cultures, where the way that it works with money is it's expected that the man goes out and makes the money, and in fact they're quite rigid, and there's not a lot of women in fields like corporate fields and stuff, more so now than ever, but still there's a lot of barriers that are still up. However, when the money comes home, it goes straight to the matriarch, and she
really
holds the purse.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Allowance.
Yeah,
and she's the one that makes the investment decisions. He does not.
Oh wow!
And there will be these groups of elder women who sit around and sort of talk about how to invest money and how to save money, and they're the ones that sort of hold on to that. I think a lot of it comes out of periods of time in which times were tough, and so there wasn't a lot of money, but it's a drinking culture. And if you read Angela's Ashes, you know this story that's culturally played out all over and over again, is that there's a man demoralized by his economic impotence who then takes the money that he's earned and drinks it away rather than feeds the family. And at a certain point, the wife has to make a decision. Am I going to take the money from you so that you don't drink it away, or are my kids going to go
right?
hungry? And this is a time, told story. That the demoralized man, in his grief and his crushed hopes, becomes incredibly self-serving in that way. And then there's this culture of kind of masculinity that says you earn the money, you have the right to do it.
Well, the money thing is interesting, though. What would you say? Why is it that most cultures, or maybe not even cultures, but why is it that we're identifying the manipulation of money or whatever as being masculine? What is it that makes it masculine? Maybe making it is masculine because it's manipulating matter. And I've always said that one of the biggest divides between masculine and feminine is that the feminine is dealing with relationship and dealing with internal being, where men are dealing with fucking around with matter. They're always manipulating things. But where does that come from? Do you think that is almost strictly cultural? That, say, in the West, men are the ones that invest and figure out money stuff or whatever. Is that a cultural thing, or is there actually something we can identify as masculine about that activity and that interest?
Well, in investment would fall into the realm in the masculine of the magician being able to make something from
right.
So like an investment,
right. Very good.
Magic oriented, and so it would require that kind of energy.
Well, it's alchemy, isn't it? Turning matter into gold. I mean, it's like from a metaphoric point of view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But so is cooking. So investment.
Yeah, right. Good point.
Cooking and both the masculine and the feminine have that capacities there.
Yeah, but cooking is a male thing, masculine thing too. It's taking care of the family and thus making a meal for them. That's feminine. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
right?
It's funny. Yeah. There's a lot of cultures in which there's kind of this carved out kind of expectation of men as cooks. I mean, even in Western culture, like if we think of North American culture, right? There is a kind of division. There's like, cooking, anything that's done outdoors, that's the realm of the masculine.
I know. I've always wondered about that. Why is that?
Certain dishes too. Like why is it that that baking is if it's like baking sweets, you think that is a sort of feminine endeavor, right. And yet baking bread is a masculine one.
Mm-hmm.
How many guys bake sourdough bread like during the it's like, how is that masculine? I mean, partly I think because the baking of bread for nourishment is a kind of material thing, but it also requires traditionally for you to wake up early in the morning, and it's a long grind. There's not a lot of flourish or flair involved. You're just turning raw material into digestible calories, right? And so it's flourish. The baker will kind of put a little S on the
but it's the feminine aspect of it is actually serving it. It's from the breast to the baby. Most waitresses traditionally were women. The cook in the greasy spoon was the guy. So it's really
France,
taking
right in France, one of the original kind of dining cultures. It's traditionally dominated by men.
All of it,
or I don't know. I mean, I couldn't definitively tell you, but that's my impression. Yeah, but the question of like where does this come from? The idea that the man goes out into the world and he brings home the money, and then the woman is the one who, well, like you said, I mean, it's like baking the bread versus serving it. I mean, essentially, he brings the money home and then she serves the money.
Serves it, right?
Yeah, and it's nurturance. Here I give
it's nurturing, right?
There, we're gonna nurture the home. We're gonna nurture the education. We're gonna nurture her health.
The community, whatever, right?
That makes sense to me archetypally why women would be naturally kind of suited to the role of the distribution of wealth in the family after it's been accrued and brought home.
That's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But that being said, it does tend to be a kind of like in managing money, it requires cold, detached, logical reasoning, which lives in the masculine, which is that, and specifically in the magician.
Yeah, that's the first thing I would think of. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it is the magician.
You
Definitely.
have to be dispassionate. You
Yeah,
absolutely
right.
have to be cold. There's a lot of warrior energy in that, because the
Yeah.
markets start to fall and you get emotional. The first thing you want to do is, sell to cut your losses. So that would be that would require a lot of masculine, attached, cool energy.
Right. Yeah, like all of these things, they get screwed up. I mean, they get mixed up. They get intertwined.
You can never really.
That's right.
You can't.
That's
People
right.
love to think this fantasy of that you could sort of separate the masculine and the feminine. That's really just fantasy. That's not. There's never one without the other.
Yeah. Right.
This splitting, this difference that we see is only ever illusionary.
Well, the whole paradigm of science is reduction. It's like breaking everything down into identifiable parts, which doesn't really work. I mean, we can learn certain things by doing that, but if that's the only way we gather information or gather awareness of nature or whatever is through reductionist science, obviously we're going to fail. And I think that, clearly psychology goes through those kind of medical model, again, masculine ways of looking at things by reducing it down to identifiable parts.
Yeah, psychology, big. That's what all of psychology is, essentially that. Yeah,
which obviously doesn't really. It's like very, very, very restricted and.
But essentially, I mean, if you take Carl Jung, who's trying to bridge the gap between the spiritual and the psychic. You look at like how alchemy does that, but it's not. But it's really, when you think about it, it's like, well, why are we talking about this masculine, feminine, these polarities? Because really, they're just illusory. And it's like, but you have to see the illusion in order to break the spell so that you can actually do something with it. Because if you're completely lost, if you can't see the masculine and feminine and name it and understand it and work with it, then you're a puppet on the string. Just like he said, what's the quote from Jung about if you don't attend to your unconscious, then you will be a puppet on the string to it, and you'll think it's fate.
You'll call it fate, right?
Call it fate. I mean, that's so. In order to, when we look at these things, we can't just look at them. We can't just see the prima materia and go, oh, well, I understand what it is. No, it needs to be understood, and to understand is to analyze, is to break down, and to compartmentalize, and to name, and to see. But that's in service of it all coming back together again. That's the completion of the alchemical process. Things have to break apart and come back together again.
Well, you're describing, or you're making the argument that the masculine and the feminine cannot exist separately, because again, the masculine is more about this kind of reductionist idea of the binary idea of making this a yes and this a no, this a particle, this a non-particle, or whatever it might be, where the feminine is more of this just being in state. It doesn't need to be broken down.
That's true.
But if you
in the feminine,
if you have one without the other, you're not integrated at all. You can't even function within nature if you only see things one way or the other way. And again, that's, to reduce it down, because I'm a guy, okay, masculine energy, just if you reduce it down to feminine and masculine, yin and yang, and split it, it's informative, just like you said. It's important to do that in order to have a full understanding. But you can't have one without the other in there. You got to do the circle.
Many sort of love to fantasize. But you're right. That's a great point about the masculine and feminine when it comes to like wholeness and fragmentation, or being and becoming. There is a kind of self-sufficiency built into the feminine, not completely. And there's incompletion with the masculine. And it's in the incompletion that comes the urgency, the kind of the frenzied nature, the kind of manic nature of the masculine that drives it out into the world to go and accomplish something. If it's not just this raging hard-on that brings you into partnerships so that you can reproduce, but the masculine has that kind of urgency. It has that agitation. It has that kind of will to like not accept things as they are, so that there can be change. But it's always balanced with the feminine that can be patient and kind of conservative. it's interesting the way that I frame it now. You know, the feminine is kind of conservative and the masculine is progressive, which is hilarious because now progressive politics have been so overly feminized that
Right.
it's that now essentially the radical left is in capture to shadow feminine in a way that's like mind-blowing. It's like it's seeing this in real time. If you want a masterclass in archetypal energies and what they look like embodied in, you know, in the world, if you're confused about what the shadow feminine looks like, go look at radical left politics. That's what shadow feminine is.
Oh yeah, yeah. It most definitely is. Yeah, and you could say the opposite too with the radical right. It's
the radical right's the shadow of the masculine. I mean, if you believe that the radical right would be someone like, you know, Andrew Tate, who's overtly misogynistic and also has very traditionally conservative views, I wouldn't want to smear conservatives by associating Andrew Tate with them. So I'll try not to. I don't think he has conservative values. I think that he is a trickster type who is exploiting an opportunity to fuck with disaffected men by using the shadow of the feminine to aggrandize himself under the guise of being hyper masculine, when really he's just a manipulative, probably antisocial, sociopathic fuckface.
I was waiting for that. Yeah, because that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, he's a
fuckface. But
first class scumbag.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. This is a very broad, you know, no-brainer comment, but it is interesting and funny how everything goes in the same bucket. It's like the extreme feminist, the extreme radical right. They are, and then the totally balanced whatever. It all goes in the same bucket. So, and it's like it's not even say averaged out in the bucket. It's all, you know, 100% each one of these things. You know, you have the fuck face in there, and even though that may only constitute, you know, 2% of that way of thinking, it gets 100% of focus on it. And of course, that's a manipulation of the media. That isn't a natural occurrence. But I mean, what are we victim to here with propaganda and the media? And I mean, I don't think we should get into that, but
we had just started down that rabbit hole. Was we're talking about the most propagandized people ever to exist.
I know.
And I won't start in on my new fascination with the woke right, because it's so true. Oh my god,
the woke right.
Oh my god, and they want to like bring you like, oh, you didn't know, let me wake you up to the realities of how, you know, the world is corrupted and manipulated in this way. And it's exactly the same story as the left is telling you. You know, you didn't know.
I know. That's what's so interesting. You see memes now on social media, and you can't tell which side they're coming from, because they're saying the same thing, and you go, I wonder if they're talking about this or that.
Well, yeah, I listened to someone the other day, a man who was saying, well, I try not to eat so much red meat because for the environment and for my health. And I'm like, I want to enlighten you. I want to awaken you up, awaken you to the reality that you've been deceived by, you know, the industry and by leftist politics that would like have you believe that that's true, because it's actually not. And I realized that I'm like, well, how am I any different? Like, it's just me. I want to wake you up to some reality that I believe to be true.
So when you said woke right, you really, in my view, you were saying awakened right, because the word woke is now
the definition of like you have been your consciousness has been awoken to, for the left, a systemic racism that's embedded in culture. And then you would say, you know, for the woke right, it's like, you know, the bias on the other side.
But there's a difference. Yeah, you weren't saying that the right is the same woke as the left. How the left, it's the same idea, but it's not the same thing. Yeah, I got it.
Well, no, you know, the woke right would be maybe its final conclusion would be Alex Jones, conspiracy theorists that are right leaning. If he's right leaning, I don't know. I don't ever listen enough to what he says to know that that's definitively true.
Yeah, I think.
But like, he's like, well, let me wake you up to all the horrible truths that you're not aware of.
Yeah, right.
Amount to this kind of conspiracy, and I think with him, it's one that leans right, but I don't pay attention enough to know.
No, I think it is. Yeah. So, anything else to say about the masculine leader and the feminine, or the woman that identifies with the feminine or constellates the feminine, and her submission, bad word, to the leader's powers?
My last thought would just be that, like, if when you find yourself in crisis, revert back to polarities and see how it works.
Right.
If you're in same-sex relationships, there's going to be one person who probably will naturally lead to one and naturally lead to the other. And if it's not there, a great conversation can be had. Let me try on the masculine and you can try on the feminine. Let's see how it works if we choose to kind of live that way. If your life or your relationship doesn't improve, then abandon that and come to something else that does work for you.
Yeah, I would say that the male in a male female relationship does, or the one that's constellating the masculine, does not have to have 100% of that role. I think when the woman is constellating the masculine and becomes the chosen leader in a particular situation, she's going to be different than the male in how she constellates that masculine leader energy, but she's still the leader, and he is the submissive to the leader.
Yeah.
I think it can go back and forth. I think every situation can have different, and I think that's important. I don't know if Danielle was implying that.
No, she does, and I was about to jump in with that point. I want to give her credit because she says at the end, as long as following the masculine lead he's moral and ethical.
Right.
Well, what would be unethical, or at least ethical adjacent, is applying it in the wrong way. Like if you're in a polarities relationship, it doesn't mean that the man gets to barge into the kitchen in the middle of dinner and tell you to do it all over again because he didn't do it the way that he wanted it. That would be ethical or moral for you to do.
Exactly. And I would include in ethical listening. I don't think any woman should have to accept this. You're the leader. Anything you say is whatever. If you're in a family community, even if it's just two people, in our day and age, both have a voice and both need to be listened to and understood and respected and regarded with what they have to say, even if totally disagreed with.
Yeah.
I think that's essential.
Maybe one more point I would make was one actually that I was kind of hoping we would spend more time on. But if your default is polarities, not that you've consciously decided to do that, but like let's say that you're in a traditional relationship based on Christian values where that's expected. Okay.
Right.
If you're in that situation and you're wondering, what the fuck, this isn't working for me, it's probably because what happens in those polarities is that you're now in a projective identity. You have asked your male-bodied person to carry spirit for you, and he's asked you to carry soul, which is blocking you from both integrating those parts in yourself, right? As long as you're the one who's got the leadership qualities and is moving forward and is taking care of the money, I can shut down the part of me that wants.
Yeah, right. Really important point. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's probably better that I leave that to the end because the likelihood of people that are in that situation to want to look at it and go to therapy for it, I mean,
they're long gone. They're taking a nap.
Yeah.
No, that's so important though, because again, that's the a downside to these very cut and dried black and white situations. We've decided to Christian values, let's say, or any other thing like that, for whatever reason, we've decided as a couple that the man is this, he's the leader, he's the decision maker, and the woman does this. We could say, well, if you decided to do that, then why not? You're following more along with the archetypal energies or whatever. But what you just said is going to diminish those people's full integration as people. And that's a really, really important point. So So
But
we've made it.
let me be a postmodernist for a minute and be morally relativistic. Maybe you don't want integration. Maybe you want to be completely unconscious so long as you go to heaven in the end. Blessed be. Good luck.
Yeah. But I mean, that applies to a lot of things. It's like we don't really have the choice. I mean, it was like what Jung said, your quote, we just accept it as fate. And it's like, you have to work toward integration, work toward being a full person, or else you will not get the whole pie, or even close to it. You won't get what you came in here to get. And on that note, we ready to say goodbye?
All is well. All right.
Okay, folks, and we will see you next time. Make comments, please write to us. We want to hear from you. Want to hear what we're doing wrong and right, and your comments. Your insights. We like to listen to you too. You don't have to just listen to us. Okay, so we'll see you next time. Take care.